Thank you for coming, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to talk a bit about energy issues in ASEAN. But rather than introducing my research, let me share my idea about how scientists or academics like us can engage in policymaking to deal with the issue. So note, this presentation is based on the inputs from the excellent co-researchers, which is written in the abstract. So energy issues in ASEAN are very complex and mutually interrelated. Energy demand in the region will be growing very fast, and finance and environmental impact and energy access issue and so on are really important. Some of the issues are fatal to the people. And the important thing is you can try to solve a few of them, and you may find a good solution for them. But you cannot. But that solution does not necessarily mean that you can solve all of them. So a policy process, which is the major focus of this presentation, is a process that's through which society seeks for satisfactory solution that is dealing to these kind of complex and unsolvable issues. So currently, ASEAN Power Grid is gaining momentum. It is a vision to enhance the level of interconnection between the ASEAN member states by connecting each region and sharing the resources. And it is expected to efficiently meet the growing demand, utilize low carbon resources, which is spread out across the region, and improve reliability and security of electricity supply. And it is also expected that the ASEAN Power Grid enables more renewable energy to be connected into the power system. So under the conventional idea of power system planning, it is usually perceived that solar and wind are the cost adder to the power system. Because the output of such generation is dependent on weather condition, it means it is unpredictable, uncontrollable, and geographically constrained. And it incurs additional costs to the conventional generators or reduce the profitability of such generators. From this viewpoint, variable renewable energy are seen as just useless, so to say, in power system. The International Energy Agency has invented a framework to renovate this idea, and the recent studies have revealed that the renewable energy can be a fuel saver. That means bring net economic benefit if the level of flexibility of power system is sufficient. In the case of ASEAN Power Grid, if there is more flexibility in ASEAN power system, that means if there is more interconnections and more flexible power generators in ASEAN, you may connect more variable renewable sources into the power system. So the IEA has conducted a study to assess the cost benefit of the ASEAN Power Grid. I won't go into detail because of time limitation, but the study results indicated that the having variable renewable energy into the system and also the ASEAN Power Grid, so I mean the more interconnections between the systems. So it will bring economic benefit at the same time as environmental benefit to the system. So should ASEAN go for the APZ? So does this mean ASEAN should go for the ASEAN Power Grid? The answer is yes, but no. Yes, but no. So yes, the ASEAN Power Grid has a prominent potential, and it can be a solution that most people in the region might be happy with. But let's try to think a bit critical. And this would be a contribution from us to the policy debate. First, the geographical focus of the model, the IEA's model on the continent, is only on the continental area where the economic feasibility is relatively high compared to the other areas. Secondly, the model only considers high voltage transmission lines between the countries and not others. And third, the electricity demand is modeled, assumed to grow as a function of GDP growth, and the load profile is assumed to be the same as the current situation. But they might entail some problems. Firstly, in this model, remote areas where electricity access should be improved is not considered. The model can answer how to improve the situation in the continental area, but not for the island area. Secondly, rural areas are not usually equipped with low level of transmission infrastructure. Therefore, it doesn't necessarily bring the benefit that the model expects. Third, the model assumes if people becomes more rich, they will follow the lifestyle that the rich people are currently doing. So if the people becomes rich, they will follow the lifestyle that the rich people are currently doing. But we can question this, of course, because the current lifestyle in remote areas are quite different from others, and they are quite diverse. So you cannot build a perfect model. So I won't argue that the IEA's model is not good enough, but their study is good enough. But I just want to emphasize the fact that we need to be very careful. We need to be very careful about whether the modeling assumption is in line with the priority that the society has. And I would argue that there is a risk to overlook other priorities, which is quite relevant in terms of SDGs. So under the UN Sustainable Development Goals, United Nations members have pledged to ensure the vision for no one will be left behind. So the priority focus should be on the most vulnerable. So this fact is really important. So that actually this requires the current policy process to be turned upside down. So think about when we think about a technical network, think about the broad map. A usual way to expand the network is by the order of rising marginal costs. So first think about broad map, and we start by equipping with the cheapest to equip, and then gradually seek solutions to extend the network to remote areas. But in this approach, the remote areas are structurally left behind, and UN Sustainable Development Framework is designed to avoid this approach. Instead of going by rising marginal cost, we need to do the opposite. So it is incredibly difficult to justify in the current policy parameters, and we need additional or new innovative parameters to do this. So monitoring inclusivity from the beginning of the policy process would be the good idea to address this. So assume if the policy priority is improving the energy situations in remote areas, what strategy would you take as a future power system? Probably decentralized semi-autonomous system can be an optimal solution. And as we have been discussing, the choice of solution will be very much relevant, very much dependent on how you frame the issue, which will of course change if the priority changes. So policy process is really important, and academia can contribute, particularly to critically assess how policy issues are framed and whether some important elements are dismissed. Given the recent trends of technological development, we can probably design the future power system in more innovative ways. For example, electricity supply doesn't necessarily be always reliable like what the conventional system assumes. We can also discuss positive social change that might differentiate the load curve. Technical potential of smarter grid or other IT solutions can be fully exploited. Of course, we can pursue both of the strategies at the same time, but sometimes resources to deal with it are limited, and we need to make prioritization over others. So, because I don't have time, but I will briefly explain about this. I'm not opposing to or recommending for any of the options, but I wanted to emphasize that the choice of strategies will be very much relevant to the choice of priorities. And that priority should be determined by ASEAN citizens, not only the ministers, but also the poor people, people in isolated areas, and so on. And in doing this, academia like us, human survivability studies can play a key role to connect these three stakeholders. For example, we did a fieldwork program in Myanmar, and we did a lot of interviews to the households who don't have electricity access. And we try to understand what is the real problem for them. And then we integrated some insights from academia, the academic disciplines. And we organized a high-level policy forum to engage with stakeholders and policymakers. In this way, we can try to contribute on the policy debate by revisiting the framing and trying to create a room so that creating room to revisit the policy framing so that other kinds of policy options can be considered. So this is the conclusion. What I tried to present was that people in remote areas tend to be excluded from the policy process, and hence energy access issue is often overlooked in the policy debate. Current mainstream approach analysis might tend to assume some top-down objectives and tend to result in heavy and centralized solutions. And we can, as an academia, we can try to solve this by connecting citizens, academia, and policymakers. So these are the contributors to the study. Thank you so much.
I thought if somebody's going to ask a question, it might as well be me. Do you think that the overlooking of remote areas is specific to this, the approach that you're talking about, or do you think governments themselves often overlook remote areas as well? Is this something that's specific to the organization you're talking about, or is this something that is epidemic across many organizations?
Thank you so much for the question. A very important point, and I don't intend to criticize any of the specific organizations. What I wanted to present is analysis needs to look at the specific focus and try to focus on some particular problems, and also governments tend to use the research results, analytical results coming from this specific approach. But when we look at the reality has a lot of aspects. So we should consider various viewpoints, and we as a human survivability studies can go to the people who are suffering or who will be suffering, and then look at the problems from various angles, and then try to integrate various insights from various disciplines. So that was my point, and I wanted to emphasize that energy access tend to be overlooked in the top-down approach, and then we should contribute more to the policy framing of the energy topic in ASEAN. Thank you.